Hey everybody, how you doing? Chicago Bears lost a very disappointing Monday Night Football game, about as disappointing in its way as the Ravens lost to the Bills on Sunday Night Football. But this game, for me, took on an entirely different interest in terms of that part of my brain that gets activated because all year long and last year I heard about this Ben Johnson guy as being some kind of genius. And I think, genius, wow. But no one could define for me exactly what Ben Johnson did that made him a genius. Okay. I mean, when I think of genius, I think of someone like like Bill Walsh. All right. Bill Walsh is an undeniable genius. Why? Because he redefined and recreated how we think about the passing game. It used to be that passing was something you did out of desperation. You do it to control the football. Bill Walsh showed us that it was possible to pass more than you run and not turn the ball over at all. He understood the power of turning the whole thinking of using the run to set up the pass right on its head, where he would use the pass to set up the run. And he did it better than anybody else to this day. Bill Walsh was true genius, but his genius didn't stop there. It continued with organizational design, where he believed that the head coach should be also the general manager. It also had to do with how he communicated with the scouting department. In short, Bill Walsh was a product of the 1960s and 1950s managerial style that prized process. That if you think about the organizational boxes and where things go and who reports to whom and how things are tied together, building a whole organization, that kind of process is what people like Bill Walsh learned. But it wasn't just Bill Walsh. In fact, I was born in that year. I was born in 1962. I'm on the tail end of it. But I grew up at the time when MBA programs were transformed by such types of techniques as theory Z and measure this and measure that, but also system dynamics, which I learned I'm an expert in thanks to, well, it's a long story in itself, but system dynamics has been at MIT by Jay Forrester in 1956. And there are more examples and go on and on and on. But the idea is to be able, in that case, to literally model the world and forecast, okay? Process, modeling a process and understanding how to change a process. But the other person in the NFL who really, I believe, who really qualifies as a true genius is another one of my favorite head coaches ever. And that person is none other than the legendary, that's right, Hall of Fame coach, not as well as Bill Walsh was, Tom Landry. Tom Landry created the flex defense, and prior to that, he created the 4-3. He understood that having the nose tackle standing up and becoming what we now call a middle linebacker would really allow the defense to flow to the ball, the point of attack as it's called, to get back quickly against the pass or rush to put pressure on the quarterback. The 4-3 was Tom Landry's creation, and the linchpin operator of the 4-3 was the great New York Giants middle linebacker, Sam Huff. And Sam Huff was the first to give way to a number of famous middle linebackers, from Ray Nitschke back in that day to Ray Lewis more currently. Tom Landry redefined defense in the NFL, but he didn't stop there. Nope, Coach Landry didn't stop there at all. In fact, Coach Landry went on to create the multiple offense as a way of combating his flex defense. And what's the multiple offense? It's not just having different formations, it's pre-shifts. It's showing 3 running backs in the backfield, shifting to 2, and then shifting again to 1, and then going the motion before the ball is snapped. They had time to do that. There's some teams that try variations of that approach today, but no one to this day does it better than Tom Landry. Nobody. So when I think of genius, I think of Tom Landry and Bill Walsh. But in the Chicago Bears game, I didn't see any shades of either one of them and Ben Johnson at all. Sure, there were, timely uses of wide formations and so on, but there was also a lot of really questionable play calling. And this gets to my real issue with Ben Johnson, is I think that he was brought up a little faster than he's truly ready to be a really, really, really great head coach. He was brought up because he is a person who calls for detail in an era where detail is not as prized as it was at the time that Tom Landry and Bill Walsh were coming up, or for that matter, me. And I have 2 playbooks I've developed in the league. One called the latest one called the Eagle Offense for the NFL, but a 72-page playbook that was blessed by Cal offensive coordinator. By the Cal offensive coordinator for Jared Goff, Tony Franklin. Tony Franklin's a great guy. If you know about the Tony Franklin system, I had him on my shows. Great, 2 interviews actually. Great guy. I got to check in with him too. But my point is that, and here's another example of a person who's a genius, Tony Franklin, really changing the way the air raid is thought of and operated. I could talk a long time about Tony Franklin. Tony Franklin does not get his due. So these are geniuses. Where's Ben Johnson's one creation? Where's that thing that we can say is uniquely Ben Johnson's that's not somebody else's? One reporter said, well, he's a genius because he thought of this play, which was a fake fumble. Well, David Shaw used the same play when he was at Stanford, and he had Andrew Luck at quarterback, and running back, I believe, was Christian McCaffrey. All right. So that was years before Ben Johnson came along. So where's the genius? And where's David Shaw now? He's passing game coordinator for the Lions. He ought to be head coach someplace, or at least offensive coordinator. But passing game coordinator, that's a waste of a truly bright mind. It really is. It really is. David Shaw should have Johnny Morton's job, period. Okay? So where's the genius? And when push came to shove, did Ben Johnson understand how to effectively use running plays and to make sure the Bears maintain their 17-6 lead? No. He was content to run it into the teeth of the Brian Flores defense. Hey, by the way, Brian Flores is another person who has to be considered for the genius tag. He's the defensive coordinator for the Vikings. And so sorry, folks, just a little hiccup there. At any rate, the fact of the matter is that the Chicago Bears lost because they didn't have an approach that assured that they would be able to keep the ball and advance the ball when they had the lead and overcome the enormous pressure that Coach Flores' defense was putting constantly on the Bears' offense. They didn't have the proper misdirection plays to, you didn't see a reverse at all, did you? I didn't. No reverses, no few screens, wide receiver screens. Where were they? All right. The common plays you use to keep a defense off balance, strangely, we didn't see from Ben Johnson's Chicago Bears. We didn't see it. Now, you would say this is, first night, we'll see more. I don't think that's it. I really don't. And the reason why I don't has to do with one little camera angle that ABC got of Coach Johnson just when Caleb Williams had directed the team down to would look like they were going to score, but they didn't score. Instead, the ball was on the one. Remember, it looked like Caleb had ran into hit the pylon. He actually slowed up, and I thought he slowed up a little too much. I don't know what that was about, but it looked like Johnson's eyes were almost welling up into tears, like, "Hey, this is going to get away from me, and this great win that I envisioned is not going to happen." And I really felt sorry for the man, because you good night, mom. Saying good night to my beautiful and great mom. But I really felt sorry for the man because he really wants to win. We all want to win. We want the Bears to win. But I'm reminded of a line that the Broncos kicker, Jim Turner, uttered toward the end of Super Bowl 12 when he said that the Cowboys were out there thinking, he said regarding the Broncos, we were out there thinking about winning. And of the Cowboys, they were out there thinking about football. And as John Facenda said, the great video that I've seen, I don't know how many thousands of times, the man doing all the thinking was Tom Landry. And I credit Ben Johnson for studying, for thinking, but where I believe he lost a bit of where he stumbled a bit was he got too tied up in thinking about winning and not thinking about football, not coming up with the right set of process answers, not necessarily answer in the moment, but process. What plays am I calling to achieve the objective of how many average yards I need and yet drain down the time? So let's say we need an average of 6 yards per carry through the run. How do I achieve that? Call a reverse? Okay, great. How do I call a reverse that doesn't cause their team speed to wreck what I'm trying to do? So you're forming the answers, and then the answers that the questions that you're forming, the answer is in the plays that you set out, right? Didn't see any of that. I didn't see any of that. I saw a lot of trying. It was almost like, well, it's almost like they were praying that this would work or that would work, but they weren't quite sure. So they need to really better proper script how they approach the game, because otherwise, when the team makes an adjustment, they're not going to be ready for it, which gets to another problem. Dennis Allen, the great defensive coordinator, and I have to say that Dennis Allen has a great track record as a defensive coordinator, used what we call a wide tackle 6, where the ends are way wide, and he left open these holes literally for the Vikings to run through, and they took advantage of it. Brother, did they take advantage of it. It wasn't until Allen dialed that back and went to a gap control that they were able to control the run. But the trouble is that the Bears don't have something like the Cowboys 4-0 defense, again, something Tom Landry created, which does a great job of, you don't have, the ends are not super wide at all. And Tom Landry called it 4-0 because you had 4 down linemen, but maybe you had, you had 4 down linemen, but maybe you had 7 defensive backs, right? Okay. And sometimes you had 4 down linemen and 6 defensive backs and a linebacker. All right. It varied depending on what Landry was trying to accomplish. But the down linemen were they were single gap, but they were head up on the linemen. They were not two gapping. And they weren't two gapping, wasn't something that Landry favored. Landry favored gap control. Allen needs to install gap control, not two gapping. And some of his defense he calls have two gapping, and that's why I hate it. Okay, all right. Chi-Town says good in preseason, trash in regular season. But Chi-Town, and thanks for your comment. Don't you think that should end? Why is it that the Bears maintain that pattern, even though last year we had Coach Eberflus, right? And this, just, and we had Matt Nagy before that. It was the same thing. I mean, is it? You can't tell me that it's the McCaskies that are just voodooing the thing. I don't believe that. I wouldn't do any of the McCaskies that way. For a number of reasons, including the fact that they've been very personally nice to me. But that can't be a reason. And maybe it's just that the Bears are not picking coaches in a way that assures a strategic approach that works. Maybe it's that. In fact, you know what? I think that's it. Let's explore that. This is not the first time I'm going to talk about this. I am going to talk about it some more. But Chi-Town, do you believe that the Vikings were lucky to win this, or that the Vikings have Ben Johnson's number? What's your answer? What's your answer as I close out? All right. Subscribe to Zenny62. That ends this broadcast. And bookmark NFL News by Zenny62.com. We'll see you.